5:30 in the morning. Every morning, for 7 years, Jackie Robinson pushed her cart through the marble hallways of Westfield Preparatory Academy while the world slept. The wheels squeaked against the polished floors, echoing in the emptiness like a lonely song. The same song she'd been humming to herself since she was invisible. 42 years old, black woman, mother of a dead son. Janitor. That's all they saw when they bothered to see her at all. The academy stood like a monument to everything she would never be. Gothic architecture reaching toward heaven like it was trying to touch God's hand. Manicured lawns that cost more to maintain than Jackie made in a year. A parking lot that looked like a luxury car showcase. BMW, Mercedes, Tesla, Porsche. Cars worth more than most people's houses. Cars driven by 16-year-olds who never worked a day in their lives. Inside, the hallways smelled like money, old money, the kind that bought silence and built legacies on the backs of people like Jackie. Oil paintings of dead white men lined the walls, their eyes following her as she mopped the floors they had walked on a century ago, as if even the dead were judging her. Jackie knew every inch of this place, every crack in the marble, every stain on the carpet, every secret hiding in the shadows. But to them, she was nothing. Background noise, a ghost who cleaned up their messes and disappeared before they had to acknowledge her existence. The teachers arrived at 7:15, designer coffee in their hands, complaints on their lips. They would walk past Jackie like she was furniture, discussing their lives, their problems, their weekend plans, never once looking her in the eye. "I can't believe I have to teach these entitled brats," Mrs. Henderson would say to Mr. Walsh, standing 3 feet from Jackie, as she cleaned the windows. "Sometimes I want to fail them all just to see their parents' faces." They talked around her, over her, through her, never to her. "Did you see the news about that janitor's son?" Jackie heard Mrs. Peterson whisper one Tuesday morning. "Hit and run. They say he was walking home from work." Marcus. They were talking about Marcus like he was gossip, like her dead boy was entertainment for their coffee break. 23 years old, working 2 jobs to help his mama make ends meet. Night shift at the warehouse, day shift at the restaurant. Never complained, never asked for handouts. Just worked and smiled and called his mama every night to check on her. "Mama, you eating?" he would ask. "Mama, you taking your medicine? Mama, you need me to bring you anything?" Marcus, who used to walk her to the bus stop when he was little because he was worried about her safety. Marcus, who gave her his first paycheck and said, "This is for you, Mama, for everything you sacrificed." Marcus, who was going to be somebody, who was going to lift them both out of the dirt and into the light. Gone, erased, hit by a car and left on the side of the road like roadkill. The police said it was an accident. Said the driver probably didn't even know they hit him. Case closed. Life goes on, nothing to see here, but Jackie knew better. She had been invisible long enough to know how the world worked, how people like Marcus got forgotten, how people like her got erased. The students were worse than the teachers. So much worse. They would drop trash right in front of her, deliberately, smile when they did it, watch her get on her hands and knees to clean up their messes like she was born to serve them. "Janitor lady," they would call her, never Jackie, never Ms. Robinson, never anything that acknowledged her humanity. "Janitor lady, you missed a spot." 16-year-olds with trust funds bigger than small countries. 16-year-olds whose parents bought their way into Ivy League schools. 16-year-olds who had never been told no in their entire privileged lives. They would throw food at her, accidentally spill drinks on floors she had just mopped, leave disgusting messes in the bathrooms for her to find, and laugh. Always laughing. Brittany Westfield was the worst. The principal's daughter, Blonde hair like spun gold, blue eyes like summer sky, smile like a razor blade. "Oh my God, did you guys see the janitor crying again?" Brittany said one day, loud enough for Jackie to hear as she cleaned the cafeteria. Like, get over it already. People die every day. They were talking about Marcus, about her grief, about the worst thing that had ever happened to her, treating it like a joke. Jackie's hands shook as she gripped the mop handle, her vision blurred with tears she couldn't let fall. Not here, not in front of them. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. But Brittany wasn't done. "I heard she steals food from the cafeteria," she continued, her voice carrying across the room like poison. "My dad should fire her. We don't need criminals working here." Criminal. That's what they called her for taking leftover sandwiches that were going to be thrown away anyway. Food she took home because sometimes it was the only meal she would have that day. The other students laughed. Of course they laughed. They had never been hungry, never counted pennies, never chose between medicine and groceries, never understood what it meant to be desperate. Jackie finished cleaning and walked away. What else could she do? Fight back and lose her job? Speak up and get labeled as aggressive? She knew the rules. She had always known the rules. Stay invisible. Stay quiet. Stay in your place. But invisibility was a double-edged sword. When people can't see you, they forget you have ears. They forget you can hear every word they say. And Jackie heard everything. She heard Principal Morrison talking to the school board about the sexual abuse allegations against Vice Principal Crawford. Heard him say they needed to handle this quietly to protect the school's reputation. "We can't let this get out," Morrison said during a late-night phone call Jackie overheard while cleaning his office. "Crawford brings in too much money from donors. We'll transfer the victims to other schools, give them scholarships, whatever it takes to keep them quiet." She heard Crawford himself bragging to the football coach about his special relationships with certain students. Heard him laughing about how easy it was to manipulate kids who were desperate for college recommendations. She heard the school counselor, Mr. Davis, selling Adderall and Xanax to students behind the gymnasium. Heard him talking about his retirement fund and how these rich kids were paying for his future. She heard teachers discussing which students they hated, which ones they gave failing grades to because of the color of their skin, which ones they would never give a fair chance. "The scholarship kids are always trouble," Mrs. Henderson said to Mr. Walsh. "Especially the black ones. They don't belong here anyway." Scholarship kids. That's what they called the few students of color who managed to get into Westfield through academic achievement instead of family wealth. That's what they called the kids who looked like Jackie's son. And then she heard something that made her blood freeze in her veins. It was a Thursday night. Jackie was cleaning the conference room after a board meeting when she heard voices in the hallway. Principal Morrison and his son, Tommy, home from college for the weekend. "Dad, I'm scared," Tommy was saying, his voice shaking, desperate. "What if they find out it was me?" "They won't," Morrison replied. "I took care of it. The police report says it was a hit and run. No witnesses, no evidence. But what if someone saw?" No one saw anything. It was late. Dark. Wrong side of town. Nobody cares what happens over there. Jackie's heart stopped. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to become even more invisible than usual. "The family of that boy who got killed," Tommy continued. "What if they start asking questions?" "What family?" Morrison laughed. "Just some janitor woman. She doesn't have money for lawyers. She doesn't have connections. She's nobody." Jackie's hands covered her mouth to stop the scream that wanted to escape. Marcus. They were talking about Marcus. "Besides," Morrison continued, "accidents happen. Boys from that neighborhood, they're always getting into trouble. Drugs, gangs, violence. Who's going to question another dead black kid?" Another dead black kid. That's what they called her son. That's how they dismissed his life. That's how they erased his existence. Tommy Westfield had killed Marcus, drunk, high, speeding through the neighborhood where people like Jackie lived, where people like Marcus worked 2 jobs and walked home in the dark because they couldn't afford cars. And his father had covered it up, paid off the police, buried the evidence, let a murderer walk free while Jackie grieved alone. That night, Jackie didn't go home. She sat in the supply closet and cried until her body had no more tears to give. She looked at the picture of Marcus she kept in her wallet, his graduation photo from high school, smiling, hopeful, believing in a future that would never come. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered to his picture. "Mama's so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Sorry wouldn't bring him back. Sorry wouldn't make them pay. The next day, everything changed. Jackie was in the supply closet during her lunch break, looking at Marcus's picture, when Brittany Westfield walked in with her phone out. "Oh my God, you guys have to see this," Brittany said, filming Jackie without permission. "The janitor is literally crying over a picture. This is so pathetic." "Please," Jackie said, trying to cover her face. "Please don't what? Don't show everyone how crazy you are." Brittany laughed. "This is going to get so many likes." The video was posted within minutes. "Even the janitor at our school is crazy." The caption read, "Literally crying at work. Ow." It went viral. Not just at Westfield, everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of views. Hundreds of thousands of people watching Jackie's private moment of grief and laughing at it. The comments were brutal, racist, violent, soul-crushing. Maybe, if she did her job instead of crying, she wouldn't be a janitor. Typical. Always playing the victim. She should just kill herself and spare us all. Ghetto trash doesn't belong in a nice school. Her son probably deserved what happened to him. Jackie read every comment, every slur, every cruel word. She absorbed their hatred like a sponge, absorbs water, letting it fill her up until there was no room for anything else. The school administration did nothing, said they couldn't control what students did on their personal time, said there were no policies against filming staff members, said there was nothing they could do about social media. But Jackie knew the truth. They didn't care. They were probably laughing too. That's when they decided to destroy her completely. 2 weeks after the video went viral, Jackie was accused of stealing a leftover sandwich from the cafeteria. A sandwich worth maybe $3. A sandwich that was going to be thrown away anyway. "We've had reports of theft," Principal Morrison said, standing over her like she was dirt. His son's victim's mother, the woman whose life he had destroyed twice over. "We can't have employees we can't trust." They suspended her without pay, made her turn in her keys while other employees watched, made her clean out her locker like a criminal, humiliated her one final time. "Security will escort you out," Morrison said, not even looking at her. "Don't come back." Jackie packed her few belongings into a cardboard box, her spare uniform, her cleaning supplies, her notebook where she wrote down everything she observed. Everything. 7 years of notes. 7 years of secrets. 7 years of evidence. As security walked her to the parking lot, Jackie looked back at Westfield Preparatory Academy one last time, the place that had made her invisible, the place that had stolen her dignity, the place that had covered up her son's murder. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken her. They thought she would disappear into the shadows and never be seen again. They were wrong. At home, in her small apartment where the rent was always late and the utilities sometimes got shut off, Jackie sat at her kitchen table and opened her notebook. Page after page of carefully documented conversations, dates, times, names, places. Everything they thought she was too stupid to understand. Everything they thought she was too broken to remember. Everything they thought she was too powerless to use. Jackie had never been good with computers, but grief and rage are powerful teachers. She learned. She adapted. She evolved. She created anonymous email accounts, downloaded voice-changing software, set up secure networks, learned how to hide her digital footprint, learned how to be invisible online the same way she had been invisible in person. The first leak was small, a recording of Mr. Davis selling drugs to students, posted on social media with the caption, "Your children's counselor is their dealer." The audio was clear. The evidence was undeniable. Davis was fired within a week. The second leak was bigger. Documents showing how Vice Principal Crawford's abuse victims had been transferred to other schools with payoffs disguised as scholarships, posted to every parent group and news outlet in the city. Crawford resigned for personal reasons. The FBI opened an investigation. Each leak was carefully planned, strategically timed, perfectly executed. Jackie released just enough evidence to create chaos, then sat back and watched the system tear itself apart. The media started paying attention. Parents started asking questions. Students started speaking up. The perfect world of Westfield Preparatory Academy began to crumble. They hired private investigators, questioned employees, searched for the source of the leaks, but they never suspected Jackie. She was nobody. Remember? She was invisible. The final leak was the biggest. The recording of Principal Morrison and his son discussing Marcus's murder. The cover-up. The payoffs. The conspiracy. Jackie posted it everywhere. News outlets, social media, parent groups, law enforcement agencies, government officials. The story exploded overnight. National news, federal investigation, congressional hearings. Prep school principal covers up son's hit-and-run murder. The headlines read, "Wealthy family buys silence after killing working-class man. Mother's 7-year fight for justice." That's when they called the emergency assembly. The Westfield Academy auditorium was packed. Parents in evening gowns and $1,000 suits. Students in their pressed uniforms. Media cameras rolling. Board members sweating. Principal Morrison stood at the podium, trying to save his career, his freedom, his legacy. "We are under attack by outside agitators," he said, his voice booming through the speakers. "People who want to destroy this institution with lies and manipulation." He talked about tradition, about excellence, about how they wouldn't let troublemakers tear down what generations had built. He talked about protecting their children from false accusations, about standing strong against those who would drag their good name through the mud. He never mentioned Marcus. He never mentioned justice. He never mentioned the truth. That's when the lights went out. The auditorium plunged into darkness. Confused murmurs rose from the crowd. Emergency lighting flickered on. Then the projector came to life. Jackie's voice filled the auditorium. Calm, clear, steady. "My name is Jackie Robinson," her recorded voice said through the speakers. "For 7 years, I cleaned your floors. For 7 years, I emptied your trash cans. For 7 years, I was invisible to you." The crowd fell silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting. "7 years ago, I came to work at this school because I needed a job. Any job. I had a son to feed, bills to pay, dreams to keep alive." On the screen, pictures of Marcus. Graduation photos, baby pictures, images of a young man full of hope and possibility. "My son Marcus was 23 when your principal's son killed him. Hit and run, left him on the side of the road like garbage." Gasps from the audience. Whispers. The sound of a room full of people realizing their perfect world was built on blood and lie. Your principal covered it up, paid off the police, buried the evidence. Let a murderer walk free while I buried my child. The recording played. Morrison and Tommy discussing the cover-up, laughing about Marcus's death, dismissing his life like it meant nothing. You taught me that I was nothing, Jackie's voice continued. You taught me that my son was nothing. You taught me that people like us don't matter. More recordings played, teachers making racist comments, students mocking her grief, staff members ignoring abuse and selling drugs and treating human beings like disposable objects. But you made one mistake. You taught me how to be invisible. You taught me how to listen. You taught me how to see everything while being seen by no one. That's when Jackie walked onto the stage. Still in her janitor's uniform, the same blue shirt and black pants she had worn for 7 years, the same worn shoes, the same invisible woman they had dismissed and forgotten. But she wasn't invisible anymore. She stood at the podium, where Morrison had just been lying to their faces. She looked out at the sea of shocked expressions. Rich parents realizing their money couldn't buy them out of this. Students understanding for the first time that actions have consequences. Board members calculating how fast they could distance themselves from the scandal. I spent 7 years cleaning up your messes, Jackie said into the microphone. Her voice steady, her eyes clear, her pain transformed into power. I cleaned up your spilled coffee and your thrown papers and your dirty secrets. I cleaned up your lies and your crimes and your cruelty. She paused, let the silence settle over them like dust. But this school, she said, her voice rising, this school was the biggest mess I ever had to clean. She looked directly at Morrison, cowering in the front row. At Brittany, no longer laughing, at all the people who had made her feel like nothing. My son is dead because of you. My heart is broken because of you. My life was destroyed because of you. Another pause, another moment of perfect, terrible silence. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And now, the whole world can see what you really are. She dropped the microphone. The sound echoed through the auditorium like a gunshot. Jackie Robinson walked off the stage, leaving them sitting in their shame and their silence and their exposure. The fallout was swift and merciless. Principal Morrison resigned that night and was arrested the next morning. Tommy Westfield was charged with vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident. The school board was indicted for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Teachers were fired. Administrators resigned. The FBI raided the school offices and seized boxes of evidence. Westfield Preparatory Academy closed permanently 6 months later. The media came calling within hours. Book deals, movie offers, podcasts, speaking engagements. Everyone wanted Jackie's story. Everyone wanted to profit from her pain. She turned them all down. Instead, she used the settlement money from Marcus's wrongful death lawsuit to go back to school, got her counseling degree, found a job at Jefferson Middle School, where the kids came from neighborhoods like the one where Marcus had lived and died. Her office was small and simple. A desk, 2 chairs, a box of tissues that was always empty because so many kids needed to cry, and Marcus's picture on the wall, watching over every conversation. Mrs. Robinson, the kids called her now. Never Jackie, always Mrs. Robinson. With respect, with recognition, with the acknowledgement of her humanity that had been denied for so long. They came to her with their problems, their fears, their anger, their pain. Kids who felt invisible, kids who felt worthless, kids who had been told they would never amount to anything. You matter, she would tell them. Your voice matters, your story matters, your life matters. She taught them that being invisible didn't mean being powerless, that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one no one notices, that justice might be slow, but it never sleeps. Some days, when the school was quiet and her last appointment had gone home, Jackie would sit alone in her office and talk to Marcus's picture. "I did it, baby," she would whisper. "I got them. I got them all." The janitor's closet at Westfield Preparatory Academy sat empty now. The building was condemned. The parking lot where luxury cars once gleamed was cracked and full of weeds. The hallways where oil paintings once hung were stripped bare. But Jackie's story lived on, not in books or movies, but in the lives of every child she counseled, every kid who learned that their voice mattered, every young person who discovered that being underestimated was actually a superpower. They had called her Jackie, just Jackie, like she was nothing. But she had been everything they feared most. She had been watching. She had been listening. She had been remembering. She came in with a mop. She left with a legacy.